Renee, so good to have you on the show today. Let's start by just kind of getting to the bottom of where you come from and learning a little bit about who you are. So, what was your first childhood memory of money?
My first childhood memory of money, gosh, I probably have a lot of those because my it was something I remember my parents always fighting about it. That was a big childhood memory for money. They were both, they didn't really have careers, so they were kind of doing the best they could to get by. So they were just, there was always that fight about money, especially on Fridays when it was daddy's payday. You would hear the rumblings and the back and forth about, the rent being paid, the cable bill being paid, or whatever it was. So I think that's probably my first childhood memory. It's just kind of hearing those conversations all the time in my ear about money and our struggles with it.
Definitely something that a lot of people say is, they remember their parents having conversations about money. So that's similar to a lot of different people. Where are you from?
I'm from Columbia, South Carolina. Yep.
So what was it like growing up in Columbia, South Carolina?
It was cool. It was the only place I lived. I lived there until I graduated from college, so didn't have anything else to compare it to. We didn't travel very much as kids. We didn't vacation out of town, or I don't think we vacationed at all, actually, growing up. So nothing else to compare it to. So it just felt like, what it was just life as I knew it, being there in Columbia. So, I mean, it was a fun place for kids. We were small, like playing outside in until the street lights came on and, all that stuff. I think the biggest attraction, if you will, in Columbia is probably where I went to school, University of South Carolina. So that kind of makes up the town. And Benedict College also is there in Columbia, which is a historically Black college. And they have grown quite a bit since I've left. So I think probably Benedict and University of South Carolina kind of makes up the city of Columbia.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that there was an HBCU in South Carolina. What about your parents and how they moved? What about why am I failing? Let me go back. So you mentioned that you went to school in South Carolina. Were there conversations being had in your household about the importance of education and, college being a thing that was like absolutely necessary, or did you kind of stumble upon college? What did your parents kind of do to prepare for the opportunity for you to get that education?
That is actually a very good question. Neither of my parents were high school graduates. So they were excited that we were graduating from high school. So there was not a whole lot of conversation at home about college, but I was surrounded by some really good forward-thinking people at my high school. I always like to shout out my trio counselor at the time. Her name was Karen Burks. She had a conversation with me about school. She set me up to go on these field trips on the college tours. And that's when I kind of started thinking college. And even initially, even then, I was saying, oh, I'm going to go to this. It's a school in Columbia called Columbia Junior College. I think it's still there. I don't know if the name has changed or not, but it's a 2-year college. And so kind of like my plan until I sat with her and she was like, why are you going to do that? Why don't you just go to a 4-year school? And so I explained to her that I just wanted to kind of get my feet wet and get started because I would be the first in my family to attend college. And she said, well, if you go to Columbia Junior College, then maybe some of your credits won't transfer if you decide later to go to University of South Carolina. She was like, so just start off there. And I was like, okay. So I started off there. I was in the trio program there at the University of South Carolina. And that's kind of how I started my journey into, advancing my education beyond high school.
how did you pay for college? I know that's usually a big thing. You mentioned your parents didn't go beyond high school. What did they do for a living?
So my mom, I can remember her, she would do like these odd jobs, like she would clean homes, usually of white women. And she would also sometimes work late at night with other family members, cleaning like school buildings and things like that. That's the only thing I can remember my mom doing as work. My dad, he kind of did a cross of things. I can remember him. I can remember him being a sanitary worker. I can remember him like kind of being somewhat of a landscaper, right? Making sure that people's yards were good, not just people, but actually organizations and corporations, making sure that the landscape was in good shape. So those are the main memories, I have of my parents. My dad, he would also pick up other odd jobs, but I never quite knew what they were. Back home, it's this visual of these men riding in the back of a pickup truck, right? We see it today, but back then, ironically, it was like mostly Black men, and now today, it's mostly Hispanic, so it's kind of shifted a little bit. But I can remember, the white guy coming to pick daddy up, and he hopping in the back of the truck, and going to work. And what he was going off to work on or on that particular day, I don't know. But gotcha. That's kind of how I remember. Those are the jobs I remember from my parents.
That's really cool. That the various odds and ends, and like you said, money coming in. You mentioned them kind of having some disagreements when the paychecks came, but it sounds like there was like lots of different jobs that they were putting together in order to be able to make ends meet for the family. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, that was definitely how things ran. And I want to back up a little bit. I didn't answer your question about how I ended up attending college without incurring. I went without incurring debt because I applied for scholarships. I was very aggressive in my college, my scholarship search. I would literally spend hours filling out scholarship applications. I actually purchased a book that had, like a lot of different scholarships in there. And it must have been like a 300 and something page book. I went through it page from page, and every scholarship that I noted that I was eligible for, I applied for it. And after applying for all of those scholarships, every single semester, I would win at least 5 scholarships. They weren't always, they were actually, none of them were like $10,000 scholarships or anything like that. It was maybe 2,000 here, 3,000 there, 500 here. And eventually I just ended up having enough every semester to pay for my schooling plus some. So every semester when, everybody's trying to get their dollars together to make sure that they could stay for that semester, I was going down to the financial aid office to pick up my refund check.
That is super cool. Yeah.
Essentially, it was like I was getting paid to go to college. So it worked out really well.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, I think so often we hear stories where, like you said, there wasn't a lot of income in the household, that, your parents didn't have a secondary education, and, people start to kind of write a story for you. But you were able to say like, hey, I'm going to college. Someone came along the way and said, not only are you going to college, I suggest you go to a 4-year college, and you went to college for free 99. Yes. So despite there not being a lot of income in the household, you were able to get that education and get the education without having to incur any debt initially. So I guess when you got to college, did you notice anything, or did you have any perceptions or stereotypes that, like, sometimes people get to college, they feel like a fish out of water, or it's their first time kind of changing environments, and, feeling like they're adulting. What did you kind of feel when you first got to college about overall, like, yeah.
I definitely felt like I was adulting, especially from my household. My mom, she was pretty strict. So there was no hanging out late at night. Even the whole curfew, like it was not even a curfew thing. It was like you just need to be home. Mm-hmm. There's no point in giving you a curfew because you're not going. So that was kind of the experience, at home. So with that, and her being, pretty strict about things, when I got to college, I did feel like I was adulting. You wake up on your own, you go to classes on your own. But she instilled a lot of great values in me, especially, integrity, because I would always go to class. I was never one of the students that just decided not to show up or whatever. I went to class. We had groups of friends that would say, okay, I'm going Wednesday and you go Friday and we'll put our notes together or whatever. And I never did that because I felt like I couldn't trust 100% somebody else's notes. Like I needed to have my own notes. So the exposure to college, I think it was all good. I learned a lot coming in through the TRIO program that I came in through. Really was a significant help because the way the program worked is you come in and you have like your own core group of teachers. So there were teachers selected just that taught the TRIO students. So this was a way to kind of be introduced to the college, to be introduced to school without being so overwhelmed. So my core courses were not these really big, grandiose classes, except for geology. I never forget Geology 101 when I stepped in the auditorium. And it was over 300 other students in there. So they didn't protect us from that. But all the other classes where we would definitely need 101, that kind of thing, they really made sure to make sure we matriculated through school in a way that we were able to feel comfortable. And, once we started getting into our core courses, majors, things like that, we then were kind of in the regular population of other students there at the university.
That's really cool. So it kind of started you out to make you feel comfortable, and coming from maybe a smaller town and, being in a program, like make sure that you got really comfortable with the overall environment before kind of just throwing you to the wolves, if you will. So what happened when you got out of, well, I guess maybe what did you major in?
My major was information management. Mm-hmm. I really think that at the time they didn't know to call it like computer information systems or what have you. So my background has always been IT, but more so on the front end than on the back end of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
tell us about that first job that you got when you got out of college. I know that's like adulting round 2. It's like we turn 18 and then we turn kind of 21 or finish college. And it's like, okay, now you're a grown up for real. You're like, ah.
Yeah. So I ended up, my first job ended up being, I was working as a help desk analyst, which basically meant I was the person you called when you had problems with your computer. Mm. So you had a problem with your computer, you call us, we troubleshoot with you, work with you to get whatever it is resolved that you need resolved done. And I kind of went from there to, starting to do desktop support, which is similar to help desk, except for I can see you live, right? I can go to your desk, walk to your desk and help you with whatever issue it was. But that was my first job, right out of college, is doing the help desk job. And I thought it was amazing, the money that I was able to make, right? Especially coming from my background. I was definitely able to go out on my own, get my own place, own car, that kind of thing. So it was really an exciting time for me when I graduated college and got my first job.
That is super cool. I know that you got a second degree. So what were the circumstances under which you decided to go back to school if you felt like you were doing pretty good when you got out of college initially?
So when I went back to school, it was interesting. So I went back to get my MBA, and I decided that it would be great for me at the time. I was trying to kind of squeeze into some leadership roles at the company. And so one of the things I wanted to do was to show like how serious I was about moving into these roles. So I was like, let me go and get my MBA. And the company also had a tuition reimbursement, a partial tuition reimbursement plan in place where we could get up to, I think it was $5,200 something per year towards education. So I thought that would be the perfect opportunity for me to go ahead and just take advantage of it. And it was 10 years, it was almost 10 years after I had graduated that I went back to school. And I didn't have kids yet, but when I started working on that journey, I did end up, I did get pregnant. And I really pushed through really fast after that because I was like, I do not want my kid, tugging at me while I'm trying to complete my studies. So, but that was kind of the premise of how I started with trying to get my MBA and further my educational goals.
I love it. I love it. So you finished the master's degree, had very little student loan debt or no student loan debt because of the reimbursement program?
Yes. So when I did undergrad, that was all debt free. When I did the MBA, the total cost of me getting my MBA was $20,000. And because I finished within 2 years and the company gave me 5,000 plus, 5,000 plus each year, I ended up having to pay $10,000 out of my pocket. And the other $10,000 the company took care of. But I didn't pay like the $10,000 like right out of my pocket right away. It was over time. That was how I kind of started accruing that after college debt, right? Again, let me go back to school. Oh, I deserve a new car, that kind of thing. So it started to build right after that.
So tell us a little bit about how you would rate kind of your financial literacy at the time that you finished your graduate degree.
My graduate degree, I was probably maybe on a scale from 1 to 10, maybe a 6 or 7 at the time I got my graduate degree because I had learned so much after the bachelor's with buying the car and all that good stuff. So by the time I was at my master's level, I think I had learned quite a bit about financial literacy at that time.
Okay. I know part of your story is that you paid off $75,000 worth of debt in a period of 3 years. So kind of tell us a little bit about how that debt came into existence. We just talked about 10K of it, but how did you come to accumulate about $75,000 worth of debt?
So it was a combination of things. The car, once I graduated from college, I decided I needed to own a new car. And so I went out and bought a new car. I remember it was a $10,000 car. Never read into the interest and all that until after I was paying it off. That my interest rate was 17%. So I paid $15,000 for a $10,000 car. So that was one way that I started accumulating debt. Of course, after college, after graduation, I eventually got married, and my husband, even though, I was pretty steadfast about accumulating it while I was in school, my husband wasn't necessarily on that same track, right? So the debt that he had from his student loans, I think it totaled around $30,000. That helped pile on that debt as well. Going to college, like I said, going back to get my MBA, that attributed to it. So by the time all of that took place, we were at, of course, so after all of that, we were now at the $75,000 mark.
Gotcha. So was there kind of a pivotal point where you said like, okay, enough is enough. We want to, accomplish XYZ. How did you get to the point where you turned around and decided to pay it off in 3 years, create a plan? And, when did the trajectory of your overall financial picture start to change?
Yeah, it was around 2009, maybe 2010. My The chapter for my sorority had a Financial Peace University session, which is a session that has been created by Dave Ramsey. And so I attended that session. It was a 12-week course, and I went every single week to hear what was being said and to learn, more about my money and managing it better. And when I was in that course, that was like, that lit the fire of debt. Like, I never liked having debt anyways, but that really kicked things into gear for me. Learning all the lessons and hearing all the things that I heard through his training really just kickstart that journey for me. And I would just go like every night that we would have the session and come back home and run home to my husband, because he wasn't going with me because Judah was born, my oldest. And so he was home with the baby while I was going to these classes. And I would just come home every night telling him about what I learned today. And that's what that I think was just the driving force for us both to just get rid of this debt. After going through those trainings, I realized that it's not necessarily true that I have to have car payment. It's not necessarily true that I have to be steeped in student loan debt. It's not even necessarily true that I carry a mortgage for 30 years. So that was really what kickstarted my journey. And so what we did is we just kind of got really serious with our funds and where they were going. And I started what Dave Ramsey has coined as the debt snowball, where you would pay off your lowest debt, lowest to highest. And as you pay off one, the money that you were paying off for that one, you would take it and transfer it over to your next debt. So, if I was paying, let's say $400 a month for a car payment, and I was paying $200 a month for a student loan payment, now I'm paying $600 for student loan payment because now I've paid the car off. And we kind of did that all the way down to the mortgage. So that's how.
That is so cool. So I know a lot of people who have really benefited from working with Dave Ramsey's program, the Financial Peace University. Sounds like it was a game changer for you all. So that's where you started with, getting debt free. You said it changed your mindset. Student loan debt doesn't have to be a thing. Car debt doesn't have to be a thing. But for me, one of the big things is like the mortgage. That's one of the things that there's so many narratives around. There's so much discussion around, I'd rather have my money somewhere else. This is a great investment, et cetera. That houses just cost this much, so I have to pay it. And I'm stuck paying this for 30 years. And people kind of like mortgage themselves up to their eyeballs to where they can't put any extra toward their mortgage on a monthly basis. But sounds like Dave Ramsey gave you like the idea that like, hey, I don't have to keep this debt. And so because I know the inside scoop, I know you didn't pay off just one mortgage, but two mortgages during the course of your kind of financial journey. So tell us a little bit about what that looked like from a process standpoint and why that was important to you.
Yeah, so it's just to expound further on the debt snowball. Like I stated, when we were paying the $400 for the car payment, and then we snowballed that into the monies we were paying for student loan, because I was paying quite a bit for my student loan debt, that I had incurred through my MBA, coupled with my husband's student loan debt. So what we started doing was, that snowballing that money towards the student loan. And anytime I got a raise or a new job, or my husband got a raise or an increase, we would increase our payments as well. And by the time we had snowballed all of that money into student loan debt, I think we were paying like maybe close to $2,000 a month for student loan debt. So now when we finally paid the student loan debt off, what we did was we continued the snowball. Now that's where most people kind of slow down, right? After they get all of their other debt paid, they go ahead and kind of slow down and chill and, enjoy the fruits of their labor, I guess. And then, before they start trying to aggressively pay off the house, well, we kept the momentum because it was already there. So all of that money we had snowballed into the student loan debt. Now we're putting that towards the mortgage. So we're paying now an additional $2,000 on mortgage, and we're still, getting new jobs and getting raises and increases. So we can put even more on that particular debt. And so the second property that I ended up paying off was actually a rental property. And after we finished paying the debt for my primary residence, we literally snowballed that money over to the rental property and just completely just paid that off. And that didn't take nearly as long. I think maybe only a year more. Yeah, because I paid off my debt. I mean, we paid off the residence in 2020. And then I just paid the rental property off in 2021.
All right. So these are newly debt-free. You are newly mortgage-free. In the middle of a pandemic, you completed paying off your mortgage when there was kind of financial turmoil around and so much just uncertainty in general. And then continued the process there to the point where now you have an investment property that is paid in full. Congratulations. Yes.
Interesting too is the debt that we paid off with the from the residential property. It was like it went so fast. Like I said, 2020 we were done with the residential property. 2021 we were done with the rental property. So it's just really, it's all about staying the course and just being disciplined.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things too, is like, as it pertains to the snowball, it gets harder and harder for some people to keep snowballing the next amount, because you start with a really little bill. Maybe it was $30 a month and you roll that in to where you're paying something that's $400 a month. Now you're done with that. So now it's $430 a month extra that's supposed to be going at the next bill. And, to your point, I don't know what the mortgage was, but a whole mortgage payment, in addition to all those other things you've been snowballing along the way, are now what's being thrown at it. So it gives you a great opportunity to, like you said, pay down a debt really aggressively. But sometimes people get a little distracted along the way. They're like, oh, I deserve a little increase over here. I deserve a little, over there, et cetera. And that is the thing that takes away from them being able to reach their goal. But, you are a part of the Millionaire Financial Series, and it is definitely interesting to hear you be talking about debt repayment, recent debt repayment. Some people would say, oh, well, if all you've been doing is paying down debt, how could you possibly be a millionaire? You must have saved something along the way. So what was your approach to saving during the course of, I guess maybe when did you kind of start saving consistently, and what's been your approach overall in order to hit that millionaire status?
So I started saving. So I've always been a saver. But I think I got most aggressive when I started investing in my company's 401k. Because when I first started investing in my company's 401k, I didn't have kids. So I was maxing it, and that was easy to do, to max it, because my husband still had, his job and his salary, and I had mine. So it was easy to max, because it wasn't like, we needed to worry about daycare and diapers and all that stuff. So I did that pretty aggressively, maxing my 401k for several years before my boys were even born. And then after they were born, I did kind of decrease it a little bit, the amount that I was giving the 401k, putting in my 401k. I decreased it a little, but not a whole lot, but just enough. I want definitely, my rule is always to hit the match number. Whatever they're matching, I'm going to hit that number at least. And then what we also started doing is having my husband, he's an educator. So he has the 403B, not the 401k. So we had him to start aggressively putting funds into his as well. And my goal, like even when I purchased my house, whatever, we've always done everything based on one income, not the combined income of us both. So being able to do everything on one income makes a huge difference, right? Because they're not going to throw in my face that I can afford $1 million for a house, right? They're not going to put that in front of me because they're not basing it off of both of our incomes. They're only basing it off of one. So, but those years that I was aggressive with my 401k, that's where the majority of my assets accumulated, just sitting there all those years like that. And on top of that, I would save on my own as well, where the money would just go straight to my savings account. Now here recently, I've learned a lot more about that even. And so now, I have an IRA account, of course. We're working on getting my husband set up. We were supposed to set that up this year, but just waiting on him. So that hasn't quite happened yet. And then what I did, so I'm always evolving and learning new things. And one of the newer things that I learned was about hiring my kids, right? So I have a side business where I am a financial coach. And so I went to a seminar and learned about hiring my kids and how $12,950 a year I could pay them and not be and them not be taxed. So what I did when I learned that is I hired them immediately and I set up IRAs for them, because the only way that they can get an IRA is they have to be employed. So they work for me and now they have IRAs. So that was really kind of what got us, to the status where we are now.
I love that you talk about something that a lot of people, I think, maybe don't put a lot of weight on. It's boring to put money into your 401k, but you attributed kind of gathering this wealth to starting with the good old fashioned 401k, 403b retirement, your employer's retirement plan. And so, what point did you hit? Like, what year, I guess, maybe did you hit the millionaire status?
That we just hit millionaire status this 2021.
2021. You are a new millionaire. Welcome.
Yeah.
And so then can you kind of share with us like the various buckets that you're invested in now? Like where across this portfolio, what does it look like? There's an investment account, the 401k, the whatever else, is the real estate included? Like, what are the various buckets that make up your portfolio at this point?
Yes. So I do have the IRA accounts, of course, is a bucket. Like I said, I also did this thing where, we saved, because one of the steps, Ramsey steps, is to save that 3 to 6 months worth of income. So we did that too early on. So we had that money sitting, we had the 401k sitting, then the IRA accounts sitting, and like you said, the real estate account sitting from the funds that we're receiving from the real estate. So that's kind of how everything is dispersed. As it relates to, exactly which, stocks and bonds and all that. I don't, I'm a financial coach, which means that I'm not licensed to tell other people what to invest in and what to do. And so with my company, I only share with people how to come up with a customized strategy to get themselves out of debt, because I have credibility, right, to do that. Another thing, of course, is I teach scholars. I search for scholarships for scholars because I know how to do that too.
Yes.
So those are the two things that I do in my business. But as far as my investments, my IRA accounts, I actually have a financial advisor that put those funds and those monies away, set that up on my behalf. So
yeah, that's excellent. So, I mean, I think you bring up a really good point about the buckets that are necessary. Like you said, there's the 401k bucket, there's Roth IRAs that are an option, there's brokerage accounts, there's real estate as an option. And I mean, to the one point of going back to the debt, we focused a lot on the paying down debt and actually getting mortgage free. But sometimes people forget about the aspect of paying down debt that increases your net worth. So when you pay down debt, people are like, oh, I'm just paying down debt. It's just money out the window, money out my pocket. You're actually increasing your net worth because your net worth is based on, assets minus liabilities, or things that you have that can be turned to cash minus those debts that you owe, what would be left over. And actually, like you said, to be mortgage free on the two homes means that both of those homes, if you cash out, which is an actual big part of your portfolio, your net worth, and one of those things that's not diminished or inflated in the way that it is sometimes with others, where they have a $500,000 mortgage and their house may be worth $750,000. Well, you got to do the math and take out the $500K you have to pay someone. So there's only $250 that's remaining as part of the net worth. And then, crazy market like right now, you may say my house is worth $700 million or something. And, but at least that you will get like whatever you get for your home, you will get all the cash out based on what it's for. So I think that's one of the key things that we don't talk very much about as it pertains to like investing in real estate and the idea around what it may mean to be debt free in that regard. There's also a lot of conversation around this idea that, you shouldn't pay off your house because your money can make so much more in the market. Can you talk a little bit about your reason for deciding to pay off not one, but two mortgages and the feelings you have now that you're debt free in that regard?
Yes. So I've heard that a lot. And when I do like different speaking engagements, there's always someone in the audience that says that, I'm going to keep my money. I'm not paying off my mortgage because I'm going to put it in the market and let it work for me. For me, it's very simple. I just don't want to be associated with debt. And I feel like the less debt that I have, the more money I have at my discretion to do whatever it is I want to do with it. Just like they don't want to pay off their mortgage so that they can invest in these different vehicles or do these different things. Well, I can do that too and not have to worry about debt on the other end of it. So they still have to worry about paying that debt off. And some people are just comfortable with doing that. I'm just not. I've never been. I've never liked that. I never liked when I had car payments. The whole idea of sending off hundreds of dollars a month to somebody else, right, to take care of my car payments, or even take care of my mortgage or whatever it was. The whole idea just it's like kind of made my stomach turn. Like, gosh, if I didn't have to send off this $500 a month for my car payment, or if I didn't have to send off, all this money each month for my mortgage, it would be mine. It would just all be mine. And so that was the driving force for me, was to get in the space where not only would I not have debt, but I could invest too. So I think that's, to me, that's my thought around the whole, thing with the mortgage and being able to just pay it off. That was why I did it. That was my why. But I understand why other people may have different thoughts about it. And I respect everybody's decision on how they decide that they want to do things. But waking up in the morning and not having any bills to pay suits me just fine.
It is so incredibly freeing yeah, to be, like you said, in a situation where you're like, ooh, this roof is really mine. It's over my head. And I don't have to go to work to make sure that I keep a roof over my head for me and my family. So you wrote a book. It is called, you wrote a book, A Journey to Financial Fortitude, How I Paid Off $75K, went to college debt free, and paid off my mortgage. So tell us a little bit about the idea behind why you decided to write a book about your financial journey.
I decided to write this book because, and I'll be transparent. Initially, I never had a thought like, I'm going to write a book one day. That was not something that I used to think about and mull over or whatever. It was just that wasn't really my thing. But I would do these speaking engagements. And every time I would do a speaking engagement, at the end, individuals that were like in the audience would ask me, Where can I find your book? Or do you have a book? And my answer always had to be no, I don't have a book. So that's what kickstarted it for me. The idea, when people kept asking me, do you have a book? Where's your book? And I was like, wow, what I'm saying, the information I'm sharing is impactful enough where people want to read more or know more. So that was the reason behind why I decided to write the book, A Journey to Financial Fortitude.
I love that. So often people will tell you where you should be heading next in your journey. It's like, I'm passionate about this, but like you said, if you want to make the full impact or, reach your full potential, people will start to say, hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? I'd love to hear you on that. That's kind of how this podcast was born. It was like, Lauren, I'd love to hear you talk more. You should do more speaking engagements. You should do more. And I'm like, oh, like, a podcast is basically a speaking engagement all the time. So yeah, that's super cool. All right, so now you're a financial coach. You're helping individuals and families do strategies to help them be debt free, just like you. What made you make the switch, or when did you make the switch from corporate America to financial coaching, and what was the kind of idea behind that?
Actually, I still am a part of corporate America. I haven't given that up 100%. I decided to be a financial coach because when I would when I go talk to different groups, organizations about finances, like I said, there's always a hunger for it. Like, I've never done a speaking engagement at the end when you say you have any questions, and I have 0 questions. I have a slew of questions every time I do a speaking engagement. So, but for me, it was a little personal too. I wanted people that looked like me to understand that they too can do this. So that's why in my book, I talk about how I grew up, in a low income area, parents that didn't get an opportunity to graduate high school, parents that never owned their own car. That's what I experienced growing up. And I wanted people to see that from me growing up surrounded by that, and that was my only exposure, that now I'm here. And I wanted them to understand that you can be here too. Don't let other people dictate what your future is going to be. You take the reins and take hold of your own destiny, and you can do this thing too. So that was really the impetus behind me, going this way where I say, okay, I can be a financial coach. And another reason too is because I knew that I had the credibility. Sometimes you have coaches or advisors or whomever that have never even experienced not, being able to have money for this or have money for that, because they had their parents to rely on, or they had their uncle or auntie that could just give them the funds. I didn't have that. So I can relate to those people that are in the same space, that I'm in. So I knew that I had the credibility. And then, like I said, I added that second arm to my business, where I help scholars find scholarships that they can attend college debt free. Again, it was a credibility thing. I did it, and I know you can do it too. I never won the lottery. I never had an inheritance, and I'm here. And I just don't think that I'm just this extraordinary individual that did this great thing. I just feel like this is not siloed just to me or just siloed to certain communities. We too can do the same thing.
I love that. Yeah, to kind of be the change you want to see, and just show people that it is possible. So, all right, as we wrap it up, I like to head into what we call the final sprint. So I'm going to rapid fire some questions at you. You say whatever comes to mind. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Worst advice you've ever received?
Worst advice, that you should expect that you're going to always have a car payment.
Ooh, so yeah. Right. Somebody done lied. You do not have to always have a car payment. Right. All right. Something you do for fun that doesn't cost anything.
Go to the park, go to the park for a walk, take my boys with me, let them play around as I walk around the park.
I like it. I like it. Yeah. Not as often anymore are people using parks, but they are there. They should be. What about what's a frugal thing that you are kind of known for doing?
Oh yeah, that one's easy. During the winter months, I set my thermostat on one temperature, and my family barks at me the whole winter season. And I just tell them to put on sweats or something. I'm like, it's not that cold. It's warmer in here than it is outside. So put your sweats on and your socks on, and because I'm not turning my heat up any further than where it is.
Wait, so what is that number? Tell us the number. How cold is it if we're coming over to visit you? We're gonna have to wear our coat the whole time we're there.
68 degrees.
Ooh, 68 is pretty chilly. Yes. Yeah. But it does save money.
I'm in Georgia, so it's not bad.
Just get under that bad.
Yeah, just get under the covers.
Why aren't you worried about people knowing about your millionaire status?
Actually, I think I was worried about people knowing. And then I thought maybe they should know. Again, so that they understand that they can do this too. Like there are Black women in America that have reached that status, and they should know it. And because it gives them something, I think, to reach for.
I love it. All right. What? I'm just looking at my list. I'm like, all right. You got $20 in your pocket. What are you spending on right now?
$20. Probably lunch.
Okay. Where are you going to eat?
Where am I going to eat? I've started this thing with the poke bowls. So
I like those.
That's the poke bowl things. Yeah. And they cost about
those are $20 too.
Yes. That's my one vice. You know, I know people talk about, you know, when they talk about how they're going to save money, they talk about taking their lunch. I've never been able to quite do that. I will spend money on lunch every day. The good thing is I've been remote for about 2 years, so I don't have to worry about it as much.
Not quite as much. You take your lunch because it's in the refrigerator, not so much as before. So it probably saved you some money over the last few years that you maybe eat out slightly less, or you door dashing everything.
Yeah. No, I don't DoorDash a lot. Really because it's too expensive. Like after they tack on all the fees. I DoorDash today, but it was because my company gave us a $25 gift card for DoorDash for employee recognition month. Employee appreciation week from last week. So I used that, and I still had to add another $2.
Woo.
And all I got was a poke bowl, not even a drink to go with it.
Oh no! So you had a $27. You were still thirsty at the end of it all. Yes. I think sometimes people don't realize how much, like you said, that ordering in, or like you said, those additional fees related to the takeout are. So, all right. Last but not least, can you share with us one thing that you would like to improve about your financial situation in the upcoming year?
Sell more books.
Okay. What is the action item in order to be able to sell more books?
I've been very present on my social media lately. I have the last Saturday of Black History Month, I completed my second book signing. Another thing that I'm doing, I'm talking to other bookstore owners to get my book into their stores. Of course, I've always been on Amazon, but I like to try to steer people, especially if they live near me, or if they want a signed copy, I steer them to order the book through me, because Amazon takes, a lot of the fees. They have a lot of fees that they kind of take away from the purchase. And also what I've been doing is I've started to try to work with the school system to get my books into the hands of maybe the juniors and seniors in their programs. And so I haven't did that yet. But what I have done is I was invited to college career fair for the school, and in lieu of me attending, they purchased 25 copies of my books for the students that were at the job fair. So I'm getting there. It's a process. So I'm excited about, when I think about my future, I'm excited about where I'll be. It's just a very exciting feeling to just know that your books are in the hands of others, especially these students, because I just want them to start off on the right foot.
I love it. That is so cool. All right, we have made it to the finish line. Here is your medal. You can now stand on the podium of the Worth Listening podcast. Yes, take it. It is beautiful. It is gold. It is shimmery. It is really whatever you want it to be because it's imaginary, but go ahead and shout yourself out. This is your time to shine. So tell us where we can find you, how we can support you, anything you want us to know.
You can find me always on my website, and that is www.financialfortitudellc.com. Again, that's www.financialfortitudellc.com. On my website, it'll take you to any speaking engagements I have, any events I have upcoming, and it'll also take you to a link to purchase my book, A Journey to Financial Fortitude. I'm also able to find on LinkedIn, Financial Fortitude LLC. You can also find me on Instagram at F Fortitude LLC, and Facebook, Financial Fortitude LLC, or just F Fortitude. So I'm on pretty much all the platforms except, well, not all, but I don't do Twitter, but I am on like I said, Instagram, Facebook, and my website. My website will pretty much take you to all of my platforms.
All righty. So we will put all those links in the show notes, of course, as always, as well as a link to the book. Renee, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It has been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure speaking to you, Lauren, as well.